Andy.
Oh, Randy. As far as I know, Randy's joining. I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay, just if you want to maybe ping him or check in or something. Just trying to confirm we've got a quorum here for our boards.
Okay, we'll do.
And then for District 1, I don't have Sam or Tony yet. Tanya, I'm not sure if they were expecting to join.
Sam is going to be late, but will be joining. He's going to be about 15 minutes late.
Okay. And there's Tony's joining right now. All right, we have a quorum of all the boards except for District 4 right now. Being mindful of everyone's time, I would suggest we go ahead and call to order the districts 1, 2, 3, and 5 meetings, and we'll call District 4 to order as soon as Randy joins. Is that okay with the board chairs?
Yeah, that works.
Works for board too.
Yes. And I'm texting him right now, Jennifer.
Thanks so much. All right, so at 3:04 p.m., we'll go ahead and call to order the 1, 2, 3, and 5 board meetings. And then just to check in, Greg, Josh, and Mitchell, just want to make sure you want me to go ahead and run through the agendas.
That'd be great. So I'll let you do the mental on that.
I'm more
yes,
than happy
please.
Yep, I'm good with that as well.
Pass that on to somebody else, but I've somehow inherited that role. So, all right, we'll run through these as simultaneously as we possibly can. So we have called to order 4 of the 5 board meetings. For item 2, director matters, disclosure matters, we have filed conflict of interest forms as those were provided to us by directors with the Secretary of State and the boards at least 72 hours before the meeting. So we'll go ahead and summarize those in the meeting minutes. I do note that Randy is joining us. We'll also go ahead and call the District 4 board meeting to order at 3:05 p.m. So we'll summarize those disclosures for the minutes, noting that on various boards, we do have conflicts that require board members to participate in order to have a quorum. So unless any of the board members have anything new or additional to add to their conflicts, we are all set with item 2. All right. Hearing nothing additional, that'll take us up to item 3 on the agendas. I did have one suggested change to the District 2 agenda that Joan pointed out. We have some strange hangover from an old meeting under item 8A. So I would suggest just deleting that because we don't have any action to take on that item. Various other ones on Districts 1 and 2's agenda, I understand that we're going to defer engagement of service providers and those type of things because we're not ready to move forward with that, but I don't think we need to delete those from the agenda. Are there any other changes requested by consultants or board members to any of the agendas?
Yeah, Jennifer, I've got one. On district number 4, item 9A would be consider approval of the 2024 Timberline Management Agreement.
Thank you, Jared. Just going to lump that in sort of generally, but yeah, that makes more sense to go ahead and add a 9AII for Timberline as well.
Thank you.
Any other changes? Okay, hearing no other changes, if I could get a motion, and I will go in order here from district number 1 to approve your agenda as presented.
I'll motion Jennifer. Josh.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. For district number 2, if I could get a motion to approve your agenda with the removal of item 8A.
Mitchell here. I motion to move.
Thank you,
Super.
Mitchell. And a second?
I'll second Andy.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Districts 3 through 5, we do have Randy on. Provided I have a motion from someone other than Todd, I could take a motion for districts 3, 4, and 5, 3 and 5 as presented, 4 with the addition of item 9AII.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Greg. And second with Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Speeding right along, we are up to item 4, which is public comment for matters not on the agenda. I actually don't see that we have a lot of members of the public joining us today. But if there are any members of the public wishing to make public comment for matters not on the agenda, now would be the time to raise your hand and come off mute. All right, I'm seeing no hands raised and I'm seeing no one come off mute. So we'll move on to item 5, which is approval of minutes. We have various minutes for different boards. For districts 1 and 2, we have meetings from December 11th, 12th, and 27th. Making sure it's the same. District 2, we also had the 21st listed. For districts 3, 4, and 5, it's just the December 12th consolidated meeting. For districts 1 and 2, I would suggest, I saw that there was additional correspondence, Joan and Jeff, today on the December 27th meeting minutes. I had not had a time to assimilate that, but I do feel like it might change the draft minutes that we did include in the packet. So I was going to suggest that we defer those to the next meeting if that's acceptable.
That makes sense to me.
Great.
That's fine.
Thanks, Joan. So with that, I'll take these in order. I'm happy to take any questions or comments on the minutes. If there are none, I'd be looking for District 1, a motion to approve the December 11th and December 12th meeting minutes.
So moved, Jennifer. It's Josh.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. For District 2, I'd be looking for a similar motion for the December 11th and 12th meeting minutes. I will note in the minutes, I understand that the boards did not actually meet on December 21st. Is that accurate for District 2 as well?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, I'll just note that in the minutes then that meeting did not occur. So if I could get a motion to approve the December 11th and 12th meeting minutes from District number 2.
Mitchell here. Motion to approve meeting minutes.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second.
Andy.
All right, got Keith first. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and then districts 3 through 5 for the December 12th meeting minutes. Yeah, get a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Greg, and a second.
Second.
Randy, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. I do note, Jeff, on the District 1 agenda, you had inserted an executive session. Here's item number 6. Was District 1 planning on peeling off at this point for an executive session, or do we want to move on to the budget discussions?
I do not think District 1 needs an executive session. If anybody
agree
on the
with-
board, sorry, there we go. The cover was closed.
Yep, I agree with that as well, Jennifer, unless any of the District 1 members have a strong objection, we can just pass on that agenda item today.
Okay. And then legal matters, we do have for districts 2 and 4, we do have the carriage house fees. I think it makes more sense to go first to just the budget discussions, if that's okay with the District 2 and 4 boards, to let Shelby jump into the budget discussions, and then we can circle back to the remaining legal items. All right, hearing no objection, Shelby, I was just making it so you could share your own screen if you prefer that. I know it's usually easier for you to drive than to instruct me on how to drive.
Yeah, yep, I will. Okay. So I believe everybody is kind of aware of where things currently stand. So the 2024 budgets were updated last week to really reflect District Number 4 as the service provider still, so kind of under the structure that's been in place. And with the District 1 and 2 general fund mill levies being transferred to District 4 to fund those costs. So that ultimately impacted those 3 budgets. And then we also pulled out the operations and maintenance fee that was previously in the District 1 and 2 budgets. And then with those changes that kind of impacted the 2024 budgeted expenditures in the District 4 budget. My understanding is that once a settlement agreement is reached and approved by all districts, that there would likely be a budget amendment at that point, kind of depending on the final direction that the districts go in. So with that, I will just kind of run through each of the budgets, and of course, feel free to stop me if there's questions along the way. So I will start with District Number 1, and on page 27 of your packet, the property tax summary information page. All of these budgets also reflect the final assessed valuation that we received since the last meeting. So also reflects kind of updated mill levy calculations where appropriate. So for District 1, there was a slight change in the assessed value, so just under 16.4 million. For the mill levy, a total of 50.488, of which 25.488 is for general fund and 25 for debt service. That debt service mill levy did not change at all. There was a slight change to the general fund mill levy, which is adjusted up from that max of 20 mills to account for changes to the method of calculating assessed valuation, which we've discussed in prior meetings. So again, with the final AV, that calculation did shift slightly. Total revenues between the 2 funds, about $827,000. So as we go into the general fund, again, this looks a little bit different, but looks the same as prior years. So we have the property taxes, specific ownership, interest income. We built in other revenue, about $3,800 just for contingency purposes, which you'll see is consistent with prior year. And then total expenditures are that same $438,000, with about $428,000 reflected as transferring to District Number 4. As I mentioned, we removed the operations and maintenance fee and therefore removed that fund that would be new for 2024. So that brings us to the debt service fund. Really no changes here. Same revenues, about $444,000 between taxes and interest. And then expenditures of about $470,000 with the scheduled interest and principal payments, which leaves about $365,000, which is covering that reserve fund plus some cushion. Footnotes, as I think I mentioned in prior meetings, we had not updated those yet with the contemplated shift in the overall structure of the districts. So these notes are pretty much identical to what we had reviewed in prior years, but happy to go through those in any level of detail. So District 1, any questions, comments?
Nothing for me, Shelby. I just want to thank you for kind of the last minute fire drill. I know swapping these budgets back and forth is not an easy task, and certainly didn't want to do that, but that's kind of the position we're in right now.
Yep, absolutely. And the credit really goes to Alyssa. So thank you, Alyssa. Okay, I will move to, do we want to run through all 5 before we do any action on individual budgets? Jennifer, do you have a preference?
I would defer to the board members, but since they're all sort of tying together, I think it probably makes sense to just run through them all. I see Josh nodding, so.
Okay. So District 2, at a high level, really the same changes that I just discussed for District Number 1. So again, 61 of your packet is the property tax summary page that reflects the final assessed value and the final mill levy calculations that we've calculated. So again, this includes the maximum O&M mill levy of 20 mills and the maximum debt service mill levy of 50 mills, and adjusted to account for changes to the method of assessed valuations. So these did increase slightly just with the receipt of final AV and final lot numbers from the county. So 25.712 for general and 64.282 for debt service. And that is revenue of about $1,056,000 for both funds. The general fund, again, this looks very similar to prior years. So we have our property taxes, SO taxes, other revenue for contingency for $317,000, with the matching total expenditures, and of that about $309,000 would be the net, showing as a transfer to district number 4. And then debt service fund, again, no significant changes here other than to the amount of property taxes from the final numbers here. System development fees, I believe we updated based on prior conversations, and Alyssa had several conversations with the Oakwood team to just kind of zero in on this number. So this is based on the planned number of system development fees that they will pay in 2024. And then expenditures remain the same at a total of $772,000, with an ending fund balance of just under $1.2 million, which does include about $100,000 increase to that surplus fund.
So, Shelby, I want to interrupt here. This is Joan. That system development fee amount is not accurate. Andy did an independent count using, Andy, do you want to explain how you determined what the amount of?
Yes, I went back to audit reports. Jennifer provided us a way to get the prior year's audit reports. And based on prior audit reports, looking for my schedule, to the end of 2022, 424,000 has been collected. A physical inventory of homes and homes under construction for District 2 indicate 319 structures. Obviously, they're in existence as of December 30th, so we should have collected $478,500. There's a $54,500 shortfall, of which the latest estimate at year-end 23 says $12,000 for the amount. So we're short either 54 or we're short 40 something. And I question how you could go from 105,000 budget to 12,000 for the year. I think there's more money outstanding due to District 2 for building permits than has been paid or scheduled to be paid. And the next year number of 34,500 is only 23 homes. The only place they're building homes is carriage homes. So 23 homes is the whole projection for next year. Something just doesn't compute in my mind.
So I believe that the work that Alyssa has done over the past couple of weeks, she has, the records that we have show that the district has received fees for 326 lots. So it's a little bit different than the number I think you had, Andy, so we can compare that to the audited reports. I also believe, and Alyssa or Greg, please correct me if I misspeak here, but some fees have been paid, I guess, kind of in advance. They paid fees anticipating to pull the permits, and then that got delayed for whatever reason. And so there's been some of that. So some of the fees received to date would cover those carriage house fees. And then the 23 anticipated for 2024, excuse me, would be what Oakwood plans kind of through the remainder of 2024.
Well, yeah, but if there are 319 structures, 249 homes, including one model home, and 70 carriage homes, 57 or 58 are complete. The rest, 12 or 13 under construction, and 2 poured footers. That's 319 homes. Sites at $1,500 a piece is $478,500. That doesn't jive with the audit reports or with what is shown left to be collected in 2023. That's my point. Even if they paid in advance, we should have $478,500.
So this is just for each individual year. So I don't have cumulative numbers in front of me, Andy. Again, our records show that fees have been received for 326 lots, so a number greater than the 319. Alyssa and I can check against the audit reports that you're referencing, but the cumulative number is not shown on this budget. This is based on fees anticipated and or collected in each of the individual years presented.
I understand that. So I went back to audit reports.
And I can step in too. So I went through our audit reports as well. And I think part of the discrepancy you're seeing, Andy, is that the fee resolution was accepted by District 2 in August of 2018. And any other building permits before that period in 2018, the fees went to District 4's general fund. So if you also look at District 4's 2018 audit, you should be able to see that difference there, since it was collected before the resolution was adopted. And there is a note in both of those audits in 2018.
Alyssa, could you please share that your schedule or reporting with the D2 board? Because we're spending an inordinate amount of time trying to get accurate information of something that should be very simple.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And what's concerning is the facilities fees are pledged to debt service payments. So if there is a shortage, you know, that's a shortage in the debt service payments that have been made. And so there's accrued interest that the district is paying on funds it should have received and paid into the bond fund. So we'd like to get that issue resolved.
Right.
Just to clarify from a 2024 budget standpoint, Shelby, D2 board, Joan, obviously, it sounds like there might be some question of whether more system development fees may be coming in 2024. Obviously, any that do come in would be paid over to the bonds. So in order for us to move forward with the 2024 budget, I'm just wondering if there was a suggestion to make a change here, that you think that there's going to be more revenue, recognizing that if we budget for a higher amount and don't get it, you know, that has some implications as well. So I'm just wondering how we move forward with the 2024 budget here, or if these are just really historical comments. I'm not saying that they're not important either way, just trying to figure out how to move forward for 2024.
So the number allocated, the 34,500, doesn't agree with the number of homes that Oakwood is projecting for 2024.
So I would reiterate that I think there's a timing difference here. Some system development fees have been paid prior to when that building permit is issued. It's due, before the permit is issued. So I would just kind of reiterate that point. And again, Alyssa and I are happy to do further work on this. From what we've looked at, we don't believe at this time that there's fees that should have been paid based on the building permit dates that have not yet been paid to the district.
So Shelby and Alyssa, I know I'm not part of D2, but I'm wondering to help that team if there's a way that we can have a report of every lot for D2, the date the building permit was pulled and the date the system development fee was collected for it. Basically that check and audit system, because it does seem like what Andy's been going back looking at, the fact that the audit reports don't line up, that is in two different reports. It feels like we're not having a clear and concise way, nor are we getting that information easily from the builder of the system development fee that came in, especially seeing, hey, that there's still supposed to be 23 homes in 2024 paid out, but it sounds like there's not 24 lots that are being developed in or completed build in 2024. So if we can see a pending of everything left for 2020 or for D2 as far as lots to be built, where those development fees are, how many have been collected, and how many are still outstanding.
Yeah.
It would be really helpful, kind of in a breakdown, because it sounds like, Alyssa, you've had those talks with the builder already, correct? Developer?
Yes.
Okay, so you could compile that and send it to us in a formal review. Would be really helpful, because then that's a thing we're hitting our heads on to where we're even just going to now the town of Erie to ask for building permits to kind of ensure that these numbers are lining up. I mean, I think the biggest glaring point that anyone sees is we budgeted $105,000 in 2023 based off of what the builder told us was going to come in the door. So expecting to build 70 homes, so
Right.
then only pull in 12,000.
That's 8 homes.
Yeah, that doesn't line up with what's actually been built in that area.
Right.
So what's on this, what's been collected, and what we're physically seeing are not aligning.
Yes. Plus, Alicia, did you say a few minutes ago that D4 collected these fees?
Yes. So that's
those
as far
fees, those fees would really belong in our debt service, either reserve fund or senior bond fund, wouldn't they? Effectively, shouldn't they come back over to us anyway to be in?
this might be more of a legal question. When I looked through the audit, the notes reflected that since the resolution was accepted by District 2, that's when they started collecting. So once the resolution was adopted,
So
I can't speak to anything before that.
So where did those funds have to go after they were collected in D4? Did they get transferred to D2, or did they get paid out to D2 bonds in any way or fashion?
I don't want to interrupt here, but maybe I would just suggest maybe we continue this. I'm understanding, from the board that this is something we really want to nail down, and we're happy to assist with that. Again, we'll kind of reference back the audits, kind of connect the dots from District 4 and District 2, as Alyssa pointed out, and get some additional communication out to the board to continue working through that. Is that appropriate for this meeting?
Well, I guess we asked for this information at the meeting on December 11th. So here we are almost a month later, and none of the information has been provided to the D2 board. So if you can get that to the D2 board, is by Friday a reasonable time frame?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and then I think it would be helpful to schedule a conference call with just a small group to go over those numbers after the D2 board receives them.
Okay, we can do that.
The D2 board is paying your fees. They are your client.
I understand that, Joan. I apologize if, we did quite a bit of work on this, and I apologize that it wasn't communicated in advance of this meeting. We are trying to work this out, and we'll continue to do so with the District 2 board.
Okay, thank you, because it's really slowing down the settlement agreement negotiations. in addition to calling into question how these numbers are arrived at and what's accurate.
Understood.
So just circling back, recognizing that there's obviously more work to be done on the system development fees for purposes of the 2024 budget that we're trying to adopt today. Is the D2 board, is there a recommendation for a change to this line item? Is it okay to leave it as is at this point, noting that there might be an amendment in the future? How does the D2 board want to proceed with this?
I would say move forward.
Right.
Just, we're most likely going to be amending our budget in the next several months anyway.
Sorry, Shelby, back to you. I just want to try to figure out how we can bring closure to these budgets as close as we can, at least for this year.
I
or
appreciate
for this
that.
meeting.
The only other change we had made to the District 2 budget, just based on prior discussions, we added a table at the back after the budget assumptions that includes the 2018 B and C bonds, as well as the accrued interest. So this top one has beginning balances as of 12/31/22 through 12/31/23, and then this bottom one is through 12/31/24. Just to be able to show kind of the full picture of outstanding debt, since the B and C bonds don't have the same schedule included in here, such as what we have for the A bonds.
Right. I appreciate you adding that, Shelby.
Of course.
May I add one more question?
Of course.
If you go back to, I think it's red number page 61.
Yes.
Right. Okay. We have moved from 78.328 to 89.994 for total millage. I understand how you calculated it. What is the impact on the year 2024? The changes you use and how you calculated 2024, will that be applied again in 2025?
I don't know that at this point, Andy. A big component there is the property exemption. So for residential lots, that's 55,000 for this current year. And so, I think we've talked in prior meetings that, reading the bond indenture and service plan, that it, would call for an adjustment for a change in the method of calculating assessed valuation, which we believe that property exemption is included in there. So that's a big piece of why you're seeing the increase that you are.
Right.
I don't know or have any inclination if that's something that would continue into 2025 or future years at this point.
Yeah, because it would seem that in the year 2025, it would no longer be a change. It would be
Really depends on what the legislature does, I think, Andy. This is Jennifer just jumping in. I don't think Shelby's crystal ball is any better than mine. I haven't heard anything from a legislative standpoint. I know there's sort of I don't think they're calling it a task force, but a working group to sort of a look at property tax issues as well. Right. So we really won't know what's going to happen for 2025 until after this legislative session.
Well, I understand that, but if hypothetically it stayed at 55,000, that technically wouldn't be a change occurring in 2025 then. I would think that the mill levy would have to fall as a result of that. It went up because the state thought it was doing residents a favor, I guess, but on the revenue neutral approach, we increased mills. So I'm worried about the impact on 2025. That's my concern.
Yeah, understood, Andy. And I know, I think typically as, legislative updates come out, Jennifer and her team and probably the other legal firms that are are working here often do updates on that once they can. Any other questions from the District 2 board?
I did
Shelby.
notice one minor change.
Yeah.
I forgot the page it is on, but you show red number 64.
Okay.
You mention a number at the end of one line, 25.488. That's 25.712.
You are right. We will update that. Thanks for catching that.
Hey Shelby, it's Mitchell here. I had just a couple quick questions just about the carriage home expenditures that were listed on page 35. It kind of also pertains to page 39 where there's a proposed price increase based on the CPI change. So I think my concern is that there is the proposed CPI price change of 14% increase. Then there have been other proposed price increases as well, but I'm just kind of wondering about the accuracy of these expenditures. I mean, we've got 77,000 in landscaping maintenance. I mean, there's 55, or I don't know, Andy knows the amount of homes that are done, 55 homes complete, but we're saying that there's an estimated 77,000 in landscaping maintenance, and that doesn't even include plant replacement, sprinkler maintenance, all of that. I don't know, that number just seems kind of high along with a couple of the other expenses listed on there.
Yeah, so
oh, go ahead.
So Mitchell, this is part of an analysis that was done prior to the fee being implemented by TST Infrastructure. So they did a kind of fee study to look at, at that point, what were the anticipated expenditures upon full build out of this carriage home filing. And so this doesn't necessarily represent the anticipated expenses for 2024, but was used to develop the initial fee amount of $99.83. And the carriage house budget is now back in district number 4, and we can look at those expenditures a little bit more, I think, prior to having either board consider that fee resolution. But does that make sense on what these amounts were?
Yeah, so are those more based on like a full build out then?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because we were kind of wondering about just the management fee and like billing expenditures. I mean, if that was 10,500 for 50 lots, I mean, that would come out to, I don't know, off the top of my head, I think it's like $18 per bill per home. So I mean, it just seemed like, we just want to make sure that before we propose any sort of price increases, we have an accurate number of expenditures. So
Yeah, Mitchell, and just to bootstrap on what Shelby said, if you look there, it says units that build out sort of towards the bottom of the page. That kind of shows that these projections were based on our best, TST's best guess when this fee was being put in place for the costs for full build out. We reattached it here to this proposed amended and restated fee resolution just to show how the basis for the original fee was reached. And to show that the original fee analysis did recommend that cost of living or CPI adjustments were going to be needed on an annual basis. And so we really erred on the side of providing all that historical information to the board. Unfortunately, it sounds like it probably was more confusing than it was maybe beneficial, but that's what the basis for that was.
Gotcha. Okay, so do we have the carriage home budget then?
It'll be part of D4's budget.
Okay.
Could we look at it now, because it's really a D2 expense?
Sure. I will skip there to start. So this is the carriage house fund for 2024. So district fees, this amount is at $103,000. That is based on the proposed amendment to the fee resolution. And based on the number of homes for sales. So that doesn't necessarily relate to the exact number for system development fees. So wanted to point that out as well.
So that's based on, so it's not based on the $100 they're currently paying. Is it based off of the proposed CPI change, or?
It is. I think it's 113,000 per month is the proposed fee amount.
That
Is-
1,000.
113?
I don't know what
Yes.
I said. Sorry.
You said 100. You said 113,000. I didn't want everyone to fall on their seats.
no.
That would be quite the fee increase.
Yeah. So Mitchell, this current budget shows it at that proposed $113 per month fee. I would point out, I believe in previous iterations, we had shown a 15% allowance for delinquencies. Upon direction from District 4 representatives, we did remove that and are showing the gross amount of revenue. I believe part of their reasoning for doing that was, if we included that allowance, then we had kind of a shortfall in this budget. So in order to show, we still do have 2,500 here in other revenue, but to show that essentially 100% of district fees at that proposed amended fee would essentially cover the budgeted expenditures for 2024.
Can we have District 4 speak up as to why they believe that is realistic and to not have a budget for unpaid fees, knowing that it does happen and is part of the yearly sticks that happens in these groups? Anyone, Greg or anyone from D4, can you please provide guidance on that? Or could you provide guidance on how D4 plans to pass this or in backdate anything that doesn't cover due to unpaid fees?
Greg, you're currently muted. Now you're unmuted. We heard you for a second there. I'm not sure if you were trying to speak or not.
Yeah.
You're kind of cutting in and out. I'm not sure if you have a bad connection there, but I kind of heard like every third syllable.
Can you hear?
Greg, you're back on mute. When you were unmuted, we could barely hear you. You were kind of cutting in and out.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
That was weird. So I apologize. Can you repeat the question? I was having a hard time hearing as well. I heard my name, but.
Oh yeah. So it sounds like CLA was advised to take out the expenditure to show a 15% of unpaid fees being collected for the carriage house homes so that the budget would balance. Just wondering why that was recommended and what the expectation is for when those fees aren't collected. Like how D4 plans to adjust for that.
Honestly, I don't know. I wasn't part of the discussions, so I don't have any feedback to provide to you, but I could get that information and follow up with you at a later date. If that'll work.
So Shelby, if it wasn't Greg, the board president for D4, are you able to say who gave you that direction or reverse course on that?
We had a conversation with Brandon last week on this.
With Brandon on it? Okay. Would any of the D4 members that are going to be here approving this budget care to weigh in and make their recommendations on this piece, since it does seem like it's not a realistic budget if it's not accounting for those deficiencies?
I wasn't a part of the conversation either, so I would need to speak to Brandon.
I'm going to
This
ask
is
a little
Randy.
bit.
Same here.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask a little bit of a different question. And I wasn't part of any of the conversations, but just because I actually don't typically see in district budgets sort of a line item anticipating that people won't pay the fees that they're supposed to pay. So I guess I'm going to ask Shelby how common it is to actually account for unpaid fees, because, and maybe it's just something I've glossed over in other districts.
Yeah, I would say we, meaning CLA, we don't do it in many budgets. But it does, if there's delinquencies, it does impact cash flow and can therefore impact, the ability to pay the expenses on a month-to-month basis, especially where we don't have, a large kind of surplus balance in this fund. And so, I know we've talked with Jerry and his team, and I think that was just the initial recommendation that had initially come forth in order to show, what might be a truer picture of, kind of the cash flow basis for the budget.
Yeah, I mean, that 15% is about $15,000, which if we only bring in 108 and have a total funded budget of 105,000, that leaves no room at all for anyone to miss a payment. Correct, Shelby, pretty much? I mean, there's 2,500 in wiggle room.
This actually shows that there's still technically a shortfall in this budget of about 2,500.
Oh, yeah, correct. I completely missed that. So even without counting for delinquencies where it's already underfunded.
Correct. I believe that's a true statement.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it'd definitely be interesting to hear from D4, since you guys are the one, or it sounds like it came from a member of your team, and then knowing that you're the ones that have to approve and make sure this budget's working, what your expectations are to have this budget work as a group to support the community.
Yeah. I do have another question. I'm kind of baffled on why the only D4 board member that was actually involved in the budget didn't show up for the budget meeting, but that's beside the point. Do we know what the operations maintenance line item is? I see we have like very detailed, landscaping, watering, snow removal, but 20,000 for operations maintenance. Do we know what that is?
Yeah, that's for management of this district for the carriage house.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's just the management fee.
Yes.
So wouldn't that be more falling under general and administrative then?
I think that's a question for Shelby. I think it's always typically been under operations and maintenance.
Yeah, we have historically shown, and I guess now I'm questioning what's on the general fund, but oftentimes when it's, management specific to the operations of that filing, we would show it under operations, whereas, district management for just kind of the overall district and not necessarily to the operations of one specific, amenity or filing is shown under G&A.
Okay.
But
yeah, that was just a little confusing because it seemed like it was, fell right in between landscaping and snow removal. So it was a little confusing. Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, if we can get those answers about the shortfall. And also, I do believe that we asked for the budget to both include the price increase, one that had the price increase and one that did not have the fee increase. So looks like this one's just with the fee increase. Did you guys happen to run one without doing the fee increase?
we didn't. I'm sorry, Mitchell. If that was requested, I completely missed it.
Okay. Yeah, if we could get that, that would be great.
We can pull that together and send that to the District 2 board so you can see that.
One other thing, if I understand the schedule correct, 103,138. If the yearly fee is 1356, that's 76 homes. And the previous 53,000 would have been 44 homes. So there's a projection of 32 more homes, carriage homes in 2024. That's a projection, I think, greater than the in budget 2 for the system development fee.
Yes. So there's a little bit of a difference between, because I think again some of those system development fees had been paid prior to when
Yeah,
building
part of the 12 under construction, probably.
Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a different number in what's included in the carriage house absorption for the fees and based on closings.
Oh, so it'd be prorated fee.
System developments. Mm-hmm.
Right, got it. So anyway, I'm just trying to hang all the numbers together, that's all.
Totally understand. There's a lot going on. Okay. Happy to stay here. Otherwise, I'll kind of go back to the first page of District 4.
I had a quick question, Shelby. This is Randy.
Yeah,
The
Randy.
2,500 other revenue, what source is that from?
That's really an unidentified revenue kind of plugged in there in order to get this budget to balance.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So the total revenue, or the fee revenue, does that include the timing of when these carriage homes come online?
Yes, the anticipated closings are prorated throughout the year, and then the fee is based on the anticipated number of homes for each month to come to them.
Yeah, and it would be helpful for the D2 board to have that information.
The 3,600 or 36,000 in other revenue for estimated 2023, where did that come from? Like, did that actually get paid in from anywhere, or was that just a loss since it was an unidentified revenue source?
We don't have final numbers yet, but I can confirm we have received some developer advances in 2023. So,
was it close to the 36,000, or what was it at?
I don't know it off the top of my head, especially I don't know if the final numbers as far as expenditures, since they're requested based on to cover the current costs. So, but I can definitely get that information over.
Okay. And I thought there was a developer cost that was shown for last year's carriage home site as well, like a developer advancement into that district by itself, but I don't see that line on this for 2023. Am I remembering correctly? Was that actually broken out into district fee, developer, and then another revenue from last year, or no?
No, I don't believe so, Jason. This is the original 2023 budget where it was put to other revenue. The general fund was the only fund that showed a developer advance for 23. Okay, we will follow up on what's been received so far.
Shelby, I don't know if there's any changes to District 3's budget, but just so we don't skip over that accidentally.
I can go back to it. And there really were no changes other than inputting final AV, which I don't believe changed much at all. Sorry. Trying to find the right page here. So this, the mill levy here is showing as being decreased to 5 mills. anticipating the commercial development here and a lower mill levy. So about $2,000 is the revenue anticipated to be generated there on the 403 of assessed value. And same as in prior years, this budget shows all net revenues being transferred to District 4. So with the specific ownership taxes, less treasurer's fees, that's estimated at just under $2,100.
I guess why would we drop, like, if there's ability to have the mill levy higher and it's pulled in 20,000 in the past, why are we dropping it down to only pulling in $3,000 for that district?
So, and any of the Oakwood representatives might have to lean on you here. So I believe, Jason, that there's a contract that is being worked through for the commercial development, and part of that contract is that the mill levy would be capped at 5 mills, is my understanding. But again, if anybody from the Oakwood team needs to correct me, please do.
I think you're correct, Shelby. This is Greg. That would be Brandon again, but yeah, I believe from what I've heard from him, that's correct.
So the rest of the districts would suffer to get a contract into that area, is what I'm understanding in their current setup.
From what I understand, it was to enable a sale of that property to a commercial developer.
So it sounds like Jason's point is valid. That D1 and D2 should pick up a higher portion of the overall operations costs.
Again, I don't know the specifics on it. That's what I've overheard.
Is there any contributions coming from the developer to make up that lost revenue that's been agreed upon outside of the district's purview?
If I'm following the math correctly, I mean, this all flows into District 4's budget, so any shortage caused by this wouldn't, Shelby, maybe I'm oversimplifying, wouldn't the shortage be covered by a developer advance in District 4?
Historically, yes.
So there's currently no developer advance for this year's budget, though, being shown on D4. So not only are we losing $24,000, there's also no developer advance coming in the door to cover that.
See, I knew I was oversimplifying. Thank you, Jason.
No problem. But even then, what developer advances have to be paid back. So if it's revenue that should have been coming in the door, it shouldn't be revenue that gets paid back to the developer, correct? It should be additional revenue coming in that's unpaid for, or not being paid back, I would feel, since that is tax revenue that would normally have been collected.
Any other?
This is a little hard to follow because D1 and D2 are required to certify the maximum operations mill levy. But then D3 is lowering theirs to about the minimum amount. And I assume that's going forward if it's contract provision.
Also looks like District 5, and I thought District 5 was the commercial. If you look on the D4 budget lines, it goes from 27,000 from D3 to 2,000, and then from District 5 it goes from 6,500 to $154. So that's almost $30,000 of revenue that's disappeared, along with developer contribution of 22,000 and 75,000. So that's $125,000 of revenue difference from 23 to 24 from districts 3, 5, and developer contributions. And I'm on page 63 of the D4 budget. which of course will be used to be justified on not opening the pool and everything else.
Jennifer, can you remind me how the intergovernmental agreement plays in here? If we're required to certify the top end, how does that impact the District 3 budget? Are they not required to held to that same standard?
Oh, you're going to ask me hard questions on things I haven't looked at in quite some time. So I would happily phone a friend in Joan, Jeff, or Matt, of somebody who's looked at this agreement much more recently than I have. But my conceptual recollection of the agreement is that the districts need to be funding with their mill levy the services that they're receiving. So there may not be a delta here since 3 and 5 really aren't getting provided any operations and maintenance at this point other than statutory maintenance. But Josh, I don't want to speak out of turn because I have not looked at this in any modern time.
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at the proportion of services they receive in landscaping compared to their value, I mean, they're receiving more services than they're bringing in by far. So it feels like should be some requirement to certify their full mill levy.
Is there services being provided in the property that's within District 3 currently?
Yeah,
I guess this is an ignorant question that I'm asking.
No, that's fair. But yeah, there's significant landscaping improvement within the boundaries of District 3 surrounding that commercial property that are being funded in large part by District 1 and District 2. And our homeowners are paying to mow the grass and the landscaping over there.
I was not aware of that. So thank you for educating me.
And then just so I'm aware, Shelby, we're on the actual budget hearings, were these the same numbers presented then during the budget hearing, or have they changed since then? Because I think I felt like I would have seen this during the budget hearing.
Mm-hmm. So I can't even remember which of our meetings was the budget hearing. I believe it was the December 12th meeting. Okay, at that point, yes, the District 3 and 5 budgets had the 5 mills rather than 20.
Oh, I'm surprised that we missed that.
And District 3 also had a debt service mill levy proposed in, if I remember.
I
think you're right. I think you're right, Josh. And then that was removed based upon discussion that would essentially start a 40-year clock on the debt service mill levy.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I think we just need clarification on how the IGA proposes this is handled. It doesn't seem like it's set up to support the residents of the district in a single form or fashion at the current moment.
I mean, I'll word it more harshly than that, Jason. It seems like the residents are paying to help a commercial negotiation that Oakwood is undertaking, which seems very, very troublesome to me.
Especially since no residents were on board when these decisions were made.
This is Todd Bloom from Oakwood. I am not real close to the transaction that's being contemplated there, but I can tell you it's not uncommon that a commercial property, it's in the best interest of this district, that they manage a lot of their own property and such. And part of the negotiations, which I'm not a part of, likely include a responsibility for them to do so. So this is intended to reduce the impact on the district and make the commercial property owner responsible for much of their own property management and such. So beyond that, I have not, like I said, been party to it, but that is frequently how these things are handled and maybe part of the rationale for why that's been reduced. It wasn't an incentive, but more of a interest in protecting the district.
Thanks. So Todd, am I understanding it correctly though, that part of the negotiation with whoever's on the other side of this deal is a reduction to the current mill levy?
No, it's not a reduction of the mill levy. It's that rather than have the district assume, management of, and I don't even, like I said, I'm not involved in this, so please take it, for what it's worth. But let's just say it's 12 acres over there, or 15 acres, right? Well, the snow plowing and the landscaping and such that's internal to that property, it's best suited for them to handle it than to have the district handle it.
I agree with that after purchase, but prior to purchase, homeowners are paying to maintain your potential commercial property. It's very troubling, Todd.
Yeah, so right now, Todd, that's a direct, so until it's actually purchased and handed over to that buyer, we're losing close to 30 grand in revenue that can be done for O&M. I mean, as we get ready to go.
I could say that I'm not going to, I mean, Brandon's intimately more knowledgeable on this, but I know that, the sale of that property is something that is to be coming in the short term. So it's not as if it's way out.
I mean, for me, I guess the biggest call in is, and as we go through D4 budget, is the fact that there's $135,000 difference in what's been presented for D4 this budget versus what was originally presented on the December 12th meetings. So as far as services being provided to the community, but then an additional $30,000 cut into funds coming into the community definitely hurts. So when you line those up, it's definitely something that seems like it's not benefiting the community whatsoever in that aspect. Especially if the developer's not going to make up that lost revenue, because I understand you're saying that it's coming down the pipe soon, which is nice. They can be coming down the pipe as soon as we want. It still hurts the budget in its current state and form that has to be passed and done through. So unless the developer is going to come in with those missing funds to help offset that lack of funding coming in the door, it doesn't help us now. So if it closes next month or in 6 months, that's still money missing from the budget.
Nor do we know if that handover of responsibility includes the currently in place public improvements that are owned by the Metro District.
Oh boy.
And then I had the chance. I was quickly reading the IGA since Jennifer asked if any of us could weigh in on it while we were talking. Jennifer, your memory is pretty much right. Paragraph 2G of the IGA requires districts to impose taxes or fees sufficient. I'm reading it off my screen over here. That's why I'm looking this way. Sufficient to fund the operation and maintenance costs of district-owned improvements located within their respective district boundaries. So that's the requirement.
So maybe as a question for Timberline is the operations and maintenance for the area surrounding the commercial property less than $5,000 a year?
I don't have that answer for you, Josh, right this second. We'd have to take a look at what improvements are on the perimeter there for District 3 and or 5.
Okay, but I guess I'm thinking just high level. It's over a half a mile of sidewalk and a pretty significant amount of landscaping. It seems improbable that it's under $5,000.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And then dewatering for that area.
Another thing to consider is what is within the District 3 boundaries. I understand the sidewalk around there is what everyone's referring to, and I do not know the answer to this, but it's possible that the District 3 boundaries do not include that sidewalk, that is extraterritorial outside of all the boundaries. It's just along the commercial. So it may or may not be within the district's boundaries.
It's within the boundaries, Matt. I appreciate that question, but it is. So it feels like if District 4 moves forward with this budget, they would be in violation of the IGA. If I said District 4, I meant District 3. I was reading off the screen.
Just because I'm a numbers person, I would make one quick clarification, not that it necessarily impacts this. The AV in districts 3 and 5 did decrease year over year. So just when we're talking dollars, I think that if District 3 had still certified at 20, it'd be about $6,000 higher rather than I think 24 that was mentioned earlier.
That's an important point. Thanks, Shelby.
But at the same time, when they raised the mills to cover that shortfall, just like the D2 had to. So instead of being 20 mills, it would go up to whatever was needed to get to the necessary amount to cover services.
I believe it could be adjusted, Jason. That calculation would still probably be quite a bit lower just because all of the AV is in non-residential classifications and the assessment rates have not changed as drastically there. But yes, to your point, it could be adjusted up.
It just seems like the concern is that we don't have an accurate budget, but then districts 3 and 5 are just assuming that they can lower the mill levy to 5 without even knowing what the actual expenditures are in those districts. So, I mean, it doesn't really seem fair to the residents or any of the other boards. So,
yeah, I guess, Jennifer, we need your input here as the common attorney for all the groups, as far as Josh's comment of if they move forward with this and how it affects the IGA, with the note that services, when the proposed revenue coming in at the current mill levy won't cover services being provided for that area. Is this something you'd recommend D3 and 5 to move forward with, or to halt?
Yeah, I'm based on the conversation we've had today. If they're not covering the cost of the services that are being provided, I'm not comfortable with the mill levies at this rate. So it sounds like none of the District 3 or 5 board members are close enough to this decision to, I guess, opine as to why 5 was the number that was required. So I think I need to have a discussion with Brandon, who's our missing board member, and we probably need to continue the District 3 and 5 meetings before they can do that. I'm not comfortable moving forward at 5 without some more information here from Jerry and or the board members.
And in addition to landscaping and snow removal, D3 and D5 should also be contributing to the overall administrative costs.
Yeah.
So administrative and utility cost as well. So all the utilities that are used for water and stuff out there. So it's not just the landscaping, it's all shared services that are done by the districts, I would feel, need to be accounted in that whatever is used to calculate their cost.
As well as insurance, accounting, legal, management.
Shelby, I know you hate us. I'm sorry.
I don't hate you, Jason. So it sounds like we'll probably continue for 3 and 5, and kind of come back to this issue. I'm going to move on to District 4 unless I hear objections. We can at least review this. Okay, so property tax summary page here. So assessed value is just under 30,000. Mill levies are adjusted based on the max 20 and 50, similar to districts 1 and 2. So that's 20.788 for general and 51.971 for debt service, which is about 2,200 in property taxes. So looking at the general fund, so again, this looks very similar to prior years. So for revenues in 24, this budget has about 752,000, which is primarily the transfers from districts 1 and 2. We have the transfers from 3 and 5. And then we put back in the District 4 budget the clubhouse rental, design review fees, and then have a small amount of interest income as well. For expenditures, the line items are, I believe, based on a kind of reduced, I think the starting point was kind of a 25% reduction in services. And then I believe some line items were further adjusted in order to get the budget to balance based on the available revenues and to maintain sufficient fund balance to cover the 3% emergency reserve. So again, not sure how much detail we want to go into on the individual line items, but that was the approach that was taken for this version.
So I guess I'll start with the first question. So you said 25,000 reduction was applied outwards. I guess to the current D4 members, what is the expectation to make that a realistic budget for this community? We already have multiple areas that have not been maintained for years. There's been quite a few items that have been completely removed. Like I said, just looking at this versus the budget that we had originally gone through, it's a cut of $135,000 from what was originally discussed in, or not even that much, it's more than that, but discussed on December 12th. What is D4's plans to ensure that the community is maintained at a level that's sufficient? And look at the first one, we originally said $135,000 for landscaping, and this has it at $112,000. Like, what is our? Can you go into details of what landscaping items are being removed and not covered?
Brandon, or not Brandon, I'm sorry, Jason. So again, we had a conversation with Brandon last week on this. And I think, and I can't speak for him, but I believe that the idea was, kind of reflect the transfers from districts 1 through 5, as had been done in the past. And then with those revenues kind of balance the budget. And so, again, I think we started with kind of a 25% reduction to service levels, and then some additional line items I believe were adjusted to get that to balance, knowing that, the negotiations are ongoing, that there's still the potential for an O&M fee at some point, and that this would all be amended at a later point this year. No, that's not necessarily helpful, but I believe that that was kind of the rationale for today's meeting.
I guess then I should pose a question, Jennifer, to you. This is one of multiple budgets over the years that doesn't have full funding or has significantly neglected the community. As a board member that was to approve this and knowing that it would not fund the community in its current state, is there any, I guess what the words I'm looking for, anything that could be used against the people, D4 members, approving this? It's too late in the day. My mind is gone. But basically, I'm looking to make sure, is D4 protected and this member's protected for knowingly passing a budget that doesn't take care of the community as a whole, especially when it's been done multiple times throughout the years with budgets being passed with unknown revenue, budgets being passed that have had multiple items cut that couldn't be done, things on those lines. So if they continually approve and pass budgets that aren't being that, does it leave them open to anything as far as there's an M word I'm looking for and I'm completely blinking on it.
Is that a negligent action? Is that what you're trying to ask me?
Maybe. That's probably what I'm going for.
Is that the word?
I was thinking, what about fiduciary duty to understand the budget that's being passed? And
so
by the D3, 4, and 5 boards?
Well,
I'm not sure.
this is Randy. I'm kind of reading the numbers slightly differently. So, and again, yeah, just take it for what it's worth. But the actual in 22 is 110. Actual in 23 is 86, which was a reduction. And to your guys' point, that was below the budget that was set. And so maybe stuff didn't get done that should have gotten done because the budget was adopted for a higher number. But what's being proposed is a 30% increase to that. And so I'm speculating because I wasn't a part of the conversation either with Brandon, but I'm just speculating that we are reflecting here an increase to what was done last year and even in 22. And so maybe the higher number at the original onset was potentially too high. That's just me speculating again, just looking at the numbers as presented here.
I'll accept this community's already had years of neglect because the budget hasn't been high enough to cover it, and you've completely taken out plant material replacements, native area maintenance to be done has dropped, which has been skipped on. Landscaping repairs has dropped down to 0 from 2,500. monument maintenance has dropped as well, which has been neglected for many years. So, as I understand, you see this as an increase. I'm telling you, as someone that's been here, and if you would like to, we can definitely bring up the past budgets that have shown unpaid for or unknown revenue that came in the door, and items that have been slashed throughout the years and not maintained. So yeah, you see 86,000 there is what's been spent so far. This isn't a, that was to, can you scroll up again for me, Shelby? That was to August, I think? Or when did that number get calculated?
These middle numbers are through July. The 86,000 is the estimate for the year.
So yeah, I mean, it's to that piece, Randy. There's been many years where things have been or not maintained and has been detriments to this community. It's kind of led us to where we are currently. So I guess what I'm looking for is basically to make sure you guys are protected. If you knowingly pass a budget that doesn't fund the community, like, I'm wondering at what point does legal say they wouldn't help anymore if the residents decided to say something about that and look into the inaction of a board that has knowingly not monitored their official duties to take care of this community.
So I mean, I think I understand sort of the gist of the questions that you're asking. I mean, I guess what I would respond with is that, you know, boards, any board, just like 1 and 2 are grappling with now on how you're going to fund things, any district can only perform the services that they have revenue coming in to pay for. So, you know, while just like I might like to live in a bigger, better house, if I don't have the income coming to pay for a bigger, better house, or to plant all the flowers in the spring, or to update my gate, or things like that, I don't think that that's a sort of breach of my duty because I don't have something bigger and better. So
I guess
I mean,
maybe I should word
it's sort of my
like you mentioned.
PowerPoint.
I guess I agree with you on that piece, Jennifer. But I guess the piece too that would have to be understood is District 4 was the one that took these items in to be maintained by the districts. So they're the ones that created the transfer, that absorbed this into the districts from the builder, but yet they didn't secure the revenue sources to pay for it, if that makes sense. So I'm wondering, like, along that aspect, just to ensure that they are properly covered on that side. Because they were the one, D4 was the one that decided to absorb this into the community to be paid for by these districts without setting up a cost sharing agreement.
I'm not sure who the cost sharing agreement would be with.
Oh, with the builder until we were at 100% build out.
Gotcha. I'm sorry.
This was going back to.
I wasn't quite appreciating. I haven't been part of all these conversations that all of you have been part of, so I understood standing.
Oh, no, this just goes back to when I asked Bruce 3 years ago of why we were taking in items from the builder without actually having revenue sources in there. So I still have those meeting recordings from when we had these budgets, and D4 was still taking in obligations to the district without having proper revenue sources.
Gotcha. Understood, Jason. And I'm not part of that sort of turnover process, so I don't know how that calculus is done as to what is being taken in for operations and maintenance. So.
All right, well, I'll get off my soapbox. I guess the only piece I would kind of push back and ask for from CLA team is the line item for utilities. Can we please start getting a breakdown of what those utilities are and where it's spent? So a breakdown into electric, water, trash, internet, gas, all that fun, instead of just a roll up.
Yes, we can do that. We can. I think we have a request from you to provide that information, so we can do that. And with finalizing this, we can break that out further on the budget. I mean. I guess moving forward, District 4 budget, I think we've discussed the Carriage House Fund. Again, happy to stop here for further discussion. The last fund for District 4 is the Debt Service Fund. So revenues here about $1,600 from the 50 mills for debt service, and then expenditures just under $62,000. Which does include about $61,000 for developer repayment from available debt service funds. So District 4, any other questions here and any other discussion for the group at this time? I don't know that we need to go into District 5 as it sounds like we need to resolve this. It was pointed out earlier that the mills here were the same as District 3 at the 5. So I think that's to be continued.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a question. It's either for Shelby or Jennifer, and I'm not sure which. What's the mill certification deadline, and what are the ramifications if they're not certified by that date?
The deadline is Wednesday. And I believe that if that deadline is not met, there would be no property tax revenues.
So there's the statute allows, if it's 80 or 90%, an assumption that you adopt a budget at, I don't know if it's 80 or 90%, for some reason I'm spacing the number right now, that's the budget that's adopted. The statutes are not clear, and if Jeff, Matt, or Joan have had any experience with this, because it's not something that's come across my plate ever. Please feel free to assist and give me your thoughts, but I don't know how that actually gets enforced, and it doesn't actually feed very nicely into the mill levy certification statute. So my answer to you is I don't know. I really frankly don't know. I think there would be a lengthy conversation with all of the lawyers that are on this call to try to figure out what it is that we could or should be doing, because I don't know how that would operate.
Yeah, I would prefer, I've not experienced it either, Jennifer, and I prefer not to. So I think it behoove all of us to do our mill levy search by the 10th. But I don't know, Joan or Jeff have a different answer. Unfortunately, I don't.
I was going to weigh in. I also haven't had it happen to me, knock on wood. I do think there's some provision, like Jennifer's talking about, where maybe your budget's presumed adopted, or maybe even like a portion of your levy is readopted by the county, but we need to do research to find out the answer for that. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I looked at it once quickly, and it was just sort of like, I think it speaks to the budget, not to the levy. But then, I mean, if your budget is solely dependent on a levy, there's an implication there, like you must also get the levy portion of it, because if not, how else do you fund that budget? But it's not very clear in the statute.
Yeah.
At least to me.
Yeah, and my concern is the budget portion is normally to satisfy the state and DOLA, where the mill levy has to go to the county. And if they don't get the mill levy cert, they may not put it on their tax rolls. So I once again, I haven't had this experience. I have had budgets not be passed because I've had boards go defunct or members of the board leave and we didn't have a board. And then DOLA just accepts it at 90% and the state accepts it, but they weren't imposing a mill levy at that time for those districts. So I don't know how it would impact the mill levy, unfortunately.
So likely the two cleaner options then are to either one, pass 3 and 5 budgets and mill levies that potentially violate the IGA, or 2, have an emergency meeting before the 10th that certifies a mill levy that complies with the IGA. Am I thinking about that? I mean, there's maybe some middle option, but those seem like the 2 most likely options.
Josh, my suggestion was going to be to the District 3 and 5 boards that we were going to continue this meeting to maybe tomorrow at 4 p.m. or something. That's going to be my suggestion to them. We can continue the meeting without having to repost or doing an emergency meeting. So my suggestion for 3 and 5 is not that they don't certify the levies or don't adopt budgets. It's just that we take a moment to look at why the mill levy is 5 and if we can increase that back up to the statutory or the service plan limit. So for 3 and 5, it was not my suggestion that they don't adopt budgets or certify mill levies. It was just that we continue those meetings to either tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday morning.
So they could also amend the budget now. We have 4 of the 5 board members, correct?
Yep, if the 4 board members that are here currently are comfortable revising the budget to adopt a mill levy that is 20 adjusted, I would feel comfortable with that. Obviously, that would produce the most amount of revenue that they're able to produce. So I think with Jeff's reading of the IGA and not having a chance to pull it up myself during a meeting, I think that would at least comply with the spirit of the IGA, which is to produce as much revenue as you can to cover your costs. So if the District 3 and 5 boards are comfortable proceeding along that line, I'm fine with that. If not, I think we need to continue the meeting so I can understand why these 5 mills are included.
Thanks.
I would recommend continuing.
And Jennifer, I'd like, as part of that, I'll likely join tomorrow. I'd like to understand the legality if they decide to go forward with 5 mills of negotiating a commercial contract and that interplay with mill levies at a certain, is that an even legal thing to do, to basically use a reduction in mill levies as an inducement to a contract?
Understood.
So I would request that the board members and consultants for Districts 1 and Districts 2 be provided the meeting packets for 3 and 5 and access to participate in the meeting.
Yeah, Jen, you will have the information that everybody on the same call will have, which will be the time, and the Zoom information will be exactly the same as it is today.
Okay.
So happy to provide any supplemental information that comes out between now and whatever time that might be.
Yeah.
Just knowing that we're continuing, I'm just wondering, Josh, should D1 as well wait for a resolution for this before and continue for tomorrow as well, or how do you want to just move forward with D1?
Yes, I was thinking from a D1 perspective, I don't see anything in ours that is problematic with the IGA. I think we know what our mill levies need to be for our debt service. We need to certify the operations mill levy where it's at. I would prefer if the other board members are on board to approve the budget, certify mill levies, appropriate funds for District 1, so that we don't take the risk of having not having a quorum present if we continue this meeting.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Josh for 1 and 2. I've got a lot of meetings tomorrow for other things too.
Okay.
Yeah, I concur with Andy and Josh for District 2 as well.
Yeah. And D2 residents may not like the fact we're paying 25.712 and somebody else is paying 5. Sour grapes, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's no actual houses for those.
Yeah, I'm on board with voting for the D1 budget and mill levy today.
Can we still participate in tomorrow or hear what's happening tomorrow, even if we vote today?
Yep.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I mean, it's gonna be a public meeting, just like any other meeting.
Okay.
Christine. So yeah, it's just going to be a continuation of this, and so everybody that's on today can join at whatever time that's going to be when we get to that part of this meeting.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean,
I don't-
to Josh and to everyone else's sentiment, I at least I don't perceive that there's anything changing from the D1 or 2 standpoint based on this. I mean, it might influence negotiations on a going forward standpoint, but for the purposes of trying to get something done today, and Joan or Jeff, I mean, jump in if you feel otherwise, but I think getting this off of D1 and D2's to-do list, and then realizing that there might be substantial amendments on a going forward basis, I think that's probably best for today.
Yeah, that's right, because amending the budget is separate than choosing and certifying the mill levies. And the debt levies are somewhat required based upon the bond documents, and we know we need the operations money to maintain the improvements.
Right. So jumping back to the D1 agenda, which is what I have up, unless there's been anything that's changed, I don't think we're doing an executive session today. Item 7, which you see the A and B at the top of my screen, were the settlement agreement and then other legal items. I don't have anything else, and as I understand it, we're not ready for a settlement agreement today. So that takes us to item 8A. As a reminder for all 5 boards, the boards all had their public hearings on the budgets on December 12th. So that portion of it's over with. We don't really have many members of the public, but if the boards want to take any public comment now, we could take those on the budget. But really the action today for district, we'll start with District 1, would be to consider approval of the resolution approving the proposed 2024 budget, certifying the mill levies shown therein, and appropriating the sums of money. Interestingly, since we're so late in the game, those budget resolutions do allow for final adjustments for the final AVs and those type of things, but we have all the final AVs, so what you have before you is really the final budget today. If there were no public comments or questions or any board member questions from D1, I'd be looking for that motion to approve the resolution approving the 2024 budget, certifying the mill levies and appropriating the sums of money.
So moved for District 1.
Thank you, Josh. Have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Wasn't sure if I heard 5 or not. Just closing out District 1's agenda for the ease of my sanity. I think items, the second item 8A, we have a numbering problem here, and B, those are sort of wrapped up in the negotiations for the settlement, and we didn't have any enclosures. So unless, Jeff, you had anything on those items, I think those are just being deferred for a later date as well.
That's correct.
And then item 9, we had listed engagement of service providers. We didn't have any enclosures based on the continuation of D4 providing services. I know your engagement, we've already talked about accounting, and your legal services engagement sort of continue year over year. So unless, Jeff, you had anything under item 9, I think we're done. Those are all being deferred as well.
I think that's correct.
That's right.
All right. For ease of my sanity, if I could get, unless there's any District 1 other business, if I could get a motion to just adjourn that meeting. And of course, you're all welcome to stay on for the conclusion of the meetings.
Yeah, I move we adjourn the District 1 meeting.
Thanks, Sam.
I'll second. I'll second, John.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. We'll go to the District 2 agenda then. Similarly, just circling back to item, 6. We have the settlement agreement, which obviously we're not ready for at this point. We do have on item or District 2's agenda the resolution to revise the O&M fees for the carriage houses. So I guess it would open it up to the District 2 board members for discussion or additional questions on this item, or what type of action you'd like to take on this. We did include, as I mentioned, a resolution, which is a lot of legalese, but it essentially sets forth the history that TST did do a rate study, kind of looking at the reasonableness of this fee. The town did sign off on the fee. The town also included with its sign off the ability to do changes for cost of living or CPI adjustments. And based on the recommendations of management, the recommendation is to do those CPI adjustments. There was not one done last year since there was only 6 months of history of the fee being in place. But so catching up for that full cycle of CPI adjustments, which would bring the fee to $113.09. As Mitchell was pointing out, Exhibit A, which is what he was keying to, was that original fee analysis done by TST in November of 2021, which is based on full build out. So that's the first series of attachments. The next attachment after that is the town's approval letter. And then you really see the increases that are being proposed to get to the 113. And those are followed by just the backup showing what those CPI increases were for those 2 years. So I'm happy to take any questions on this item. As Shelby noted, the District 4 budget does currently contemplate a increase in the carriage house fees. So if this is not passed today, that'll have to be revised accordingly. So I would open it up to District 2 board members on this.
I would just chime in really quick. I know that the District 2 board has asked for kind of the analysis to see a side-by-side of what this looks like without a fee increase. So would simply just note that, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but this does not necessarily have to be in place as of today. It can always be done later on throughout the year. That just obviously then impacts the revenue for 2024. So if there's...
Yeah, Shelby, that's a great point that, yeah, it doesn't have to be increased effective today. The board could change it today, tomorrow, next week, next month, yeah. But yeah, it does obviously play into then the revenue number since those fees are currently being collected.
Yeah, I think since Board 2 is still waiting for more information in regards to the budget, I think it would be best to table this line item.
Okay.
Isn't it currently in D4's budget though? So
it is.
Tabling it or passing us now makes no sense.
I'm sorry, passing it now or tabling it now? Andy,
Well,
just trying to make...
Tabling it makes sense. Acting on it now doesn't.
Well, is it technically out of our hands if D4, who's actually in control of the carriage home fee, has already basically said we're raising it to $113? So isn't this basically irrelevant?
If the resolution was adopted by D2 and D4, since the property is in D4, or I'm sorry, I misspoke, the property's in D2. So D2 then directs that those fees are paid over to D4 to pay the cost of the services for the carriage homes. So both boards really need to adopt this resolution to increase the fee. If the fee is not increased, then as Shelby mentioned, it obviously impacts the budget. And there's going to have to be an assessment of providing sort of less services to the carriage homes so that the costs are being covered by the fee.
Well, that's not exactly true. There's a lot of questions about the services being provided and the carriage house budget. So my recommendation to D2 is to table this item.
Okay, thank you, Joan.
Yeah,
And Mitchell,
tabling it.
yeah, Mitchell, I think you sort of, you had already noted your preference for tabling it. So just to formalize, I'll take that as a motion to table this item.
Yeah, I motion to table it.
And do I have a second?
I'll second, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, it takes us up to the budget item. Similar with District 1, as I mentioned, we already have had the public hearing on all the budgets. So if the board is ready to move forward, today's action would be to approve the resolution adopting the proposed 2024 budget, certifying the mill levies, and appropriating the sums of money.
And Jennifer, the one change that I would like to make is adopting the budget conditionally upon change in D3 and D4 or D5 budgets.
Good point.
If D2 is going to take that action, and Joan, I defer to your thoughts, but I think that then you need to also just continue your meeting, because if I have a conditional approval and the condition is not satisfied, I don't have time to notice for another meeting before the mill levy certification deadline. So D2 could put itself in a position where it actually hasn't adopted a budget and certified the mill levies because its condition wasn't satisfied. And then you could find yourself in default under your bonds and those type of things.
This is Keith with D2. I see no reason to have a contingent on our budget. What D3 and D5's budget is irrelevant to us. It only affects the D4 O&M budget. It doesn't change anything as far as our budget's concerned. That's my 2 cents.
I would agree with Keith on that. If it has any impact, it would be an amended budget down the line.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve as presented with the revision to page 64 to update the O&M mill levy in the notes?
Oh, yeah, I see.
So motioned.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. On District 2's agenda, we have consider approval of cash position and property tax schedule. So at your December 12th meeting, you did review a cash position and property tax schedule. Those were presented and I failed to have the board actually accept them. I don't feel strongly about having you accept them today, especially since we didn't put them into the packet, but just to explain why that was included there. Item 7C, termination of advance and reimbursement agreement. That is tied up with the settlement, I think, of all the other items. So I think that item's being deferred. Likewise with all the items under 8. So unless any of the board members or Joan had any other business, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the District 2 board meeting at 4:49 p.m.
Just real quick, did we approve the previous meeting minutes?
You did.
Okay, sorry.
Well, some of the previous meeting minutes, not all of them, because there was one set that I'm still sort of working through with Joan and Jeff.
Right, okay. Then I motion to adjourn D2's meeting.
Thank you.
I second.
Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Districts 3 and 5. Sorry, looking at calendars. Shelby or Alyssa, when you're probably much busier than the rest of us are right now. So are you available sort of late in the day tomorrow for a continued meeting? Or would you prefer Wednesday morning?
I've got a couple other board meetings Wednesday morning, so I would prefer tomorrow afternoon if possible.
Okay. Would 4 p.m. tomorrow work for at least a quorum of Greg, Chris, Randy, and Todd?
I'm available probably till 5 o'clock, 5:30 maybe.
Okay.
Yes, I'm available as well.
Yeah, it works for me.
All right.
Me
So
too.
if I could get a motion from districts 3 and 5 to continue the board meeting to 4 p.m. tomorrow, it'll be the same Zoom information. I will send out an invite.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. District 4. I still have Matt with us here.
Can I interject real quick, Jennifer?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. With the continuations of 3 and 5 for tomorrow, I would like to pose a question to be answered with regards to the assessed valuations of the vacant land and the oil and gas. They both dropped rather significantly. I understand District 3, you know, half of the carriage home land would decrease the land assessed value, but like the oil and gas seems, I don't know if there was changes made as to where the 3 and 5 line was for oil and gas, but for instance, the oil and gas goes from 174,000 to 21,000, and I know the oil wells didn't move. So just part of tomorrow's meeting, I would like to understand that before, because that also affects, you know, the mill levy and when you put a mill levy on what went from 300,000 to 30,000, whether it was a 20 mil levy or a 5 mil levy, that's a huge difference in assessed value. And I guess that comes directly from Weld County, but I don't know if they specifically gave reasons on why the numbers dropped so significantly.
Okay, yeah, and I can circle up with Shelby and see if we have any reasonable idea why the changes that occurred.
Yeah, and just really quick, oh, go ahead.
I'm probably going to say what you were going to say is just that oil wells are very volatile and production changes from year to year, and these are done on arrears of what gets taken out the year previous, and so there's a very good chance oil well production has just gone down in the well that are on site. I have no inside knowledge on this district at all. Just I see that in many other districts that the oil and gas AV fluctuates significantly and goes down very significantly at some point in time of the life of the well. So that very well could be what's happening there.
Yeah, I would understand the oil piece, but the vacant land piece would also be of interest. Like for instance, on District 5, it says 112,000, and then for 24, it says $20. Like, really? The land lost all its value? Or is that because of the pending sale that nobody knows about? But
I think District 5's boundaries may have been shrunken in the interim, because District 3 is really the only district that's on the commercial property now. So I think the boundary change may have also been part of that, Keith, but I can look at the dates of that.
yeah, okay. Yeah, and then same thing with on the District 3 side, it went from like 1.1 million down to like 300,000. I understand some of that could be because it went from vacant land to, you know, the carriage homes, because that's part of it. But yeah.
And as mentioned earlier, Q2, the other piece that I think was being or part of this is redoing the calculation, kind of how D2 had its calculation redone with the new assessed values. I think Shelby mentioned that that can happen as well for D3 and 5 based upon the new assessed value.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure whatever, or D3 and 5 should make sure whatever they move forward with, that the proper calculation's done, and it takes us up to the proper mill levy to generate the revenue needed to cover their necessary services.
Right.
Great. Circling back to the D4 agenda, D4 board members, did you also want to just defer action then on the carriage houses pending D2's action?
I think that's a wise move. I don't know what the other board members feel.
I agree.
We'll just leave that on the agenda for next meeting then. Item 7, at your December 12th meeting, you did have your public hearings both on the 2023 budget amendment and the 2024 budget. The 2020 budget amendment was reviewed at the last meeting and is unchanged. We didn't actually approve that because we sort of deferred on all the budget items, but nothing has changed since we discussed that in December. Just hasn't actually been approved. And then your D4 budget, obviously we've discussed that today. There might be some minor revisions based on D3 and D5's budget, but I think that the D4 board could approve the budget and certification of the mill levies pending any adjustments based on the final budgets approved by D3 and D5. as long as Matt, you feel comfortable with that approach.
That is fine with me. The one comment I'd ask is, does the change in, or the not change in carriage home fees impact the carriage home fee budget? Or since we're over budgeting revenues, we're fine, or do we need to adjust the approved budget accordingly?
Yeah, the budget is going to have to be revised. So Shelby, Jerry, and team, we had a previous budget, I think in December, based on the old fees. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So I think it would be reverting, unless you or Jerry have different thoughts, it'd be reverting back to the budget that was presented previously.
I would just make it clear that I believe that budget had a larger other revenue line item, that's an unidentified revenue source. And as shown on 2023, we had requested developer advances to kind of cover that shortfall of other revenue. So would of course defer to the district board on that, or if we need to try to adjust the expenses.
The district board members, I think, some input there of whether the larger unidentified revenue line item works for you at this point, knowing that hopefully a carriage house fee change can be adopted in the short term, and it can be assessed at a later date, or do you prefer to have Jerry and his team work on reducing services?
Would this be something that we would continue until tomorrow as well, Jennifer, or?
Yeah, you definitely can. You would have a quorum of this board at the same time. Yeah, so if you prefer to review that further in comparison to the December budget, so that you're able to better look at that tomorrow, we could definitely do it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Great. So just closing out what we can on D4 then, item 7A is the budget amendment that you have already had the public hearing on, as I mentioned, unchanged from the December meeting. So if I could get a motion to approve the resolution approving the proposed budget amendment for 2023 and appropriating those sums of money.
So moved.
Thank you, Greg. Do a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, and we'll continue this meeting for the purpose of 7B. Under item 9, we do have engagement of your service providers. We did add 9A double I. That information was included in the meeting packet. It just wasn't an enumerated agenda item, and that was for Timberline. You have included here your management agreement with MSI, the Timberline proposed agreement for 2024, and your snow maintenance agreements for clubhouse and common area, and landscape agreements for clubhouse and common areas as well. All of those have been at least partially reviewed at this point. We have been working with management on some revisions. So what you have included in your packet here are the latest versions of these. We are still waiting on some final revisions. I think we were looking for some maps possibly to attach to the landscape and snow maintenance contracts. We also had a couple of revisions that were requested to the management agreements just to get those finalized. I'm sorry, the management agreement with Timberline, to get that finalized. The MSI agreement, I believe, is in final form. But if the board is amenable to approving these contracts subject to final revisions acceptable to board president and legal counsel, I think that's probably the best course forward today, unless Matt or any of the board members had a different thought on that.
I can't tell if am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted, yes, Matt.
Okay, I'm muted to tell you I have no issue, but now I unmuted once again to tell you I have no issue with your plan course.
Thanks, Matt. With that, if I could get a motion, we can just take one motion for all the items under 9.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Greg. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, great. And then with that, we're also going to continue the District 4 board meeting to 4 p.m. tomorrow. If I could get a motion to continue the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, who was the second?
That was Todd.
Okay, sorry, Todd. I didn't, your box didn't light up. Randy, and hold it, Todd. Todd, you're not on this board. I need a different second.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. We will see you all tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep.